Man, what's cracking, gang? It's T Nasty, and I'm back with another banger for you guys. So, we all know there's been plenty of cocky fighters, plenty of champions who believe they were unbeatable, and just plenty of fighters who talked a lot of shit before a fight, only to end up getting their ass whipped. When losses like this happen, I like to refer to it as a humbling. Alright? And some of these humblings can be extremely satisfying. There's no better feeling out there than when some cocky piece of shit gets put in their place. So, today what we're going to be doing is breaking down what I believe to be the most satisfying humblings in UFC history. If your favorite fighter is on here, I'm sorry, but they needed to be humbled. Alright, starting off with one of my favorites. This is a recent one that went down at UFC 300. Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira. Now, I brought this one up a couple videos ago, but Jamal spent the whole time on Twitter arguing with fans about how he was going to knock out Pereira and stuff. And I don't know if you guys remember the press conference, but this dude Jamal was going crazy. He really thought he was going to be like immune to Pereira's power or something. Then before the fight, he was being super cringy. He pretended to catch the arrow that Pereira shoots before he gets in the cage. And then he tried mogging Pereira in the face-off. But nobody can do that. And he just sits there and freaking stone-faces you. And it's like, oh, trauma. And then the fight started, and Pereira just knocked him out with one punch. And now Jamal is back to bitching on Twitter and making videos with 37 camera angles. He needed to be humbled, and this one was very satisfying. Next up, we got an OG humbling. This is one of my favorite ones of all time, Ronda Rousey versus Holm. Now, this humbling is one where we had a dominant, long-reigning champ who just started to get way too overconfident. Before this fight, Ronda was going on talk shows and doing interviews and stuff, talking crazy, dude. She truly believed she was invincible. She honestly had, decently good reason, as she was murking girls in, less than a minute. But she hasn't faced a fighter like Holm yet at that point. I remember watching this fight live and being completely shocked, because not only did Ronda lose, she got fucked up bad. Holly really embarrassed her out there. She didn't even show her face for a year, dude. She was running around backstage with her freaking hood over her head. This honestly might be the most satisfying humbling of all time, especially with hindsight, as Ronda has turned out to be so insufferable now. Okay, next we got probably the most famous humbling of all time, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Now, this one was great for me because you all know I'm a huge Nate Diaz fan. He's probably my favorite fighter of all time. Originally, McGregor was supposed to fight RDA for the lightweight belt. Now, this is coming off his crazy win over Aljo, and he was going for double champ status. But when Dos Anjos pulled out, who stepped in but Nate Diaz? Now, back then, nobody thought Diaz would beat Conor. Even 2 weight classes up on short notice, nobody thought he had a chance in a title fight against a guy like McGregor. Before the fight, Conor talked so much shit. Basically embarrassed Diaz, honestly. Kind of made him look stupid. But normally that tactic works, breaking people before they even get in the cage with Conor. But it didn't work on Nate. Once the fight started, Conor dominated round 1, hurting Diaz on a couple of occasions. But towards the end of the round, he started to gas. Then in round 2, Nate poured it on. He even hurt him, broke Conor, and turned him into a wrestler, eventually making Conor tap in one of the craziest upsets of all time. This was a humbling that for sure needed to happen, and boy was it satisfying. Moving on, we have another champ who was just smoking a bit too much of their own supply, if you know what I mean. Now, Israel Adesanya against Strickland. This fight really wasn't even supposed to happen. The number 1 contender was DDP, but he couldn't fight, so they had to give the shot to Strickland on short notice because they needed a title fight in Australia. Before the fight, everybody and their mama, me included, thought Izzy was going to knock Strickland the fuck out. Izzy was clearly looking right past Strickland. He didn't think Sean had a chance against him. But crazy enough, man, Sean went out there and made it look easy. He low-key dominated Izzy on the feet. I am an Izzy fan for sure, but it's always satisfying to see somebody who is extremely arrogant get smoked and embarrassed out there. Keeping it going, next we got Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards. One of the greatest upsets of all time, which I picked, by the way. But before the fight, Kamaru was talking crazy, saying he was going to box Canelo. Dude, no. He started acting like he was McGregor, dressing like him, talking like him. He thought he was the money fight, and he was going to steamroll Leon. Low-key in that fight, Kamaru was dominating him, but in that 5th round, Leon caught him slipping and put him to sleep. Headshot dead. This was just a great humbling because the fame definitely got to Kamaru's head, and you could tell he was getting very full of himself. Leon had to end that and humble him. And then we go right into Leon's own humbling against Belal Muhammad. I'm going to say again, I picked Belal to win, but he really went out there and dominated Leon. Before the fight, Leon was acting like Belal didn't even exist. He dismissed him so much, even though he was barely winning in their first fight. I don't understand why he was doing that. He said at the weigh-ins he was going to knock Belal the fuck out, and he was too slow, but Belal put on a masterclass out there and embarrassed Leon. Now it's back to the prelims for him. This one was just so satisfying because Leon hadn't done shit and was acting like he was the king. He overlooked Belal, and he had to pay for that. Another very satisfying humbling for another overconfident champion. All right, now y'all didn't think I wasn't gonna glaze Sugar Sean in this video, did you? Next up, we got Aljo getting humbled by Sugar Sean O'Malley. This one is most satisfying to me because it wasn't just Aljo that got humbled; it was the entire MMA community. If you go back and watch some videos of people's predictions and breakdowns of that fight, literally nobody picked Sean. Every single one of them picked Aljo. All the fighters, all the analysts, and all the fans, they all thought Aljo was going to dominate O'Malley. Most of all, Aljo thought he was going to dominate him. He was at the press conference saying he was going to expose him. It seemed like he didn't think Sean was as good as he is, and he was certainly overlooking him. The best part is, everybody was hating on Sean back then, and now they were all picking him against Merab. The only part that pulls this one down a little bit is the fact that Aljo is still not very humble, and he has made a lot of excuses, but doesn't change the fact that he was talking crazy, then got face planted by the Sugar Show. Obviously, I'm very biased, but this is one of my favorite humblings of all time. Alright, next up, we got another big humbling in the bantamweight division. Dominick Cruz against Cody Garbrandt. Now this one was crazy because Dominick was the long reigning champion, going up against a guy who was barely even in the top 10. Also, Cruz was beating up all of Cody's teammates, including his coach Uriah Faber. This was the main reason he even got the title shot, because of Cruz's rivalry with the team. This is why Dominick Cruz and most of the fan base was overlooking Cody. Before the fight, Cruz was embarrassing him on the mic. He really made Cody look stupid. But in the fight, it was the opposite. Cody went out and put up one of the biggest upsets of all time, and he was the one to make Cruz look silly. You could see in Cruz's post-fight interview that he had truly been humbled. Cody was like the Matrix in there, dodging almost all of Dominick's strikes and emoting on him. That was definitely an embarrassing loss for him and one of the most satisfying humblings of all time. Alright, got a couple more for you guys. Moving on, we have Luke Rockhold against Michael Bisping. Now, you guys know I love Bisping, so this one was very satisfying for me. They had fought before, and Luke Rockhold won pretty convincingly. So when Bisping got a title shot on short notice, Rockhold thought he was going to get an easy title defense. In the build-up, Luke was very dismissive of Bisping, but Bisping low-key humbled him on the mic too. Then in the fight, Mike went out and introduced Luke Rockhold to Left Hook Larry. He knocked him out in the first round to take his title, embarrassing and humbling him in the process. And finally, we have what is, in my opinion, the most satisfying humbling in UFC history. Justin Gaethje versus Charles Oliveira. Now, to set the scene for this one, we had Charles defending his title against Gaethje. And around this time, there was a bit of a narrative going around that Charles was a quitter. I don't know why this is a thing at that time, since he clearly proved to be false in both the Chandler and Poirier fights, but Gaethje leaned into this narrative heavily. He repeatedly called Oliveira a quitter in interviews at the press conference, but Oliveira made him pay in the fight. Not only was this one of the best one-round fights ever, but Charles absolutely humbled Gaethje and exposed his weakness on the ground. Gaethje thought he had it won after hurting Charles multiple times. Then right when he thought he had him, Charles dropped him bad with a right hand and then followed him to the ground and proceeded to make him tap. The quitter made him quit. It was just so satisfying to see a guy who talked so much shit, called my boy Charles a quitter, and then he hit the Uno reverse and made him quit. Now, before we get out of here, guys, I just want to throw out a couple honorable mentions. We got to give a quick shout out to my boy Conor from earlier, man. This dude has been humbled so many times, it's not even funny. He got humbled against Nate Diaz. He came back from that and proceeded to win a double championship status. And then he fought Floyd Mayweather, and then he came back and got humbled against Khabib again. Khabib just mauled him. He was drunk. And then he came back again, knocked out Donald Cerrone in like 20 seconds. He went to Fight Island and proceeded to get knocked out by Dustin Poirier and humbled again. Anyways, this was essentially a top 10. I listed 10 for you guys. It's not really in particular order except for that last one, but that about does it for this one, guys. Who doesn't love a good humbling, right? Anyway, let me know down in the comments what your favorite humbling is, or if there's anyone in the UFC right now that needs to be humbled. If you guys enjoyed the video, show some love to that like button. We're on the road to 100 subscribers, so go ahead and sub if you haven't already. Alright, I'm out. Take it easy, gang.